Look closely at the people surrounding you right now. They smile, they offer pleasantries, and they swear absolute loyalty. But what happens when the floorboards of your life crack and the cold winds of reality blow in? Niccolò Machiavelli recognized a brutal truth 500 years ago. The masses live in a perpetual state of emotional delusion. But the sovereign mind is forged solely in the fires of calculated betrayal. Why does an emotional ambush alter a warm human being into a detached fortress for decades? Why do certain internal scars refuse to fade long after the battlefield has gone quiet? The painful truth is that human beings possess a terrifying psychological capacity, unlike any other creature. An animal encounters a predator, escapes, and returns to its baseline. But a human being will strap themselves to the torture rack of their own mind, replaying a single moment of rejection or deceit tens of thousands of times. One calculated sentence from a hidden adversary can liquidate a person's confidence for a generation. One traumatic exposure can transform an open, empathetic soul into a fiercely guarded strategist. They didn't choose coldness out of malice, they chose it because warmth carried a price tag that almost bankrupted their sanity. Pain doesn't merely break your heart, it violently overhauls your entire psychological operating system. When you are young, you believe the pleasant lies of the crowd. You believe that loyalty is a default human setting, that absolute transparency shields relationships, that virtue guarantees victory. Then, Machiavelli's reality enters the room. You discover that people are only as loyal as their current options. You realize that your pure kindness is categorized by opportunists as structural weakness. You see clearly that the vast majority of human networks operate entirely on cold transaction rather than genuine kinship. And the absolute worst casualty? You lose the original version of yourself. The version that walked into rooms without running threat assessments. The version that believed in human goodness before receiving an explicit reason to doubt it. Machiavelli understood what the masses spend their entire lives fleeing from. Beneath the thin varnish of manners, smiles, and social performance, human behavior is relentlessly governed by fear, self-interest, and raw survival. Once your eyes pierce this veil, a permanent structural shift occurs within your mind. The world feels colder. Trust begins to feel like a high-risk gamble. If you have ever felt permanently altered by an event you never fully healed from, listen to every word of this breakdown. Before we advance, anchor your mental transition. Drop this affirmation in the comments section below. Pain changed me. Section 1. The psychological awakening there is a precise moment in the trajectory of an evolving individual, where a profound detachment settles over their reality. The external scenery remains identical. The crowd still laughs, yet internally the gears have shifted entirely. It feels as though the entire human population received a secret manual on how to effortlessly navigate society, and your copy was intentionally withheld. You begin to spot the invisible exhaustion leaking out from behind people's smiles. You hear social interactions not as genuine human connection, but as highly orchestrated theatrical performances. You notice how exceptionally rare it is for two human beings to speak with raw, uncalculated honesty. Slowly, the world loses its emotional safety. This dark awakening accumulates through a steady pile of quiet observations. It is watching an associate applaud you publicly while actively engineering your downfall behind closed doors. It is noticing that certain entities only activate your phone line when their own castle is burning, yet vanish completely the moment your sky turns gray. But Machiavelli warned us that patterns do not evaporate simply because you choose to blindfold yourself. Eventually, the data becomes too overwhelming to ignore. And once the illusion shatters, your foundational energy changes permanently. You stop entering rooms with an open chest. You filter your thoughts through a strict internal censor before uttering a single syllable. Not because you have developed a hatred for humanity, but because your nervous system has been masterfully trained by reality to proceed with extreme caution. Machiavelli noted that human beings never expose their true architecture during seasons of comfort. Their authentic nature is only revealed when pressure, envy, or direct self-interest takes the driver's seat. A friend will stand shoulder to shoulder with you, right up until the exact moment that standing there demands a personal sacrifice. After witnessing this loop repeat indefinitely, a calculated detachment sets in. You do not feel superior, you simply find yourself standing completely outside the matrix of society. You sit in crowded rooms, feeling psychologically miles away. Once your self-awareness sharpens to a razor's edge, shallow interactions cease to be a casual pastime. They become an absolute drain. Gossip sounds like static noise. Fake excitement feels repulsive. This is the exact reason why highly strategic individuals become incredibly quiet as the calendar turns. It isn't because they lack thoughts. It is because they have realized how few people are worth the expenditure of their words. When loyalty is scarce, absolute silence becomes the only honest strategy left. There is an even deeper layer to this Machiavellian awakening, the definitive realization that an emotional savior is not coming to rescue you. Strategic maturity forces a cold awakening. Every individual around you is desperately trying to manage their own internal chaos. The person executing tasks with flawless confidence often goes home feeling like an absolute imposter. Everyone is carrying an invisible weight. When that realization finally lands, the awakened mind stops outsourcing its healing to whoever walks by. They finally grasp that self-mastery is an entirely internal execution, uncomfortable, unglamorous, and completely non-transferable. Perhaps that is what a true psychological awakening actually is. It is not becoming a cynical monster. It is simply training your eyes to view human beings exactly as they exist in nature, complicated, volatile creatures driven by fear, insecurity, and ego. Once you awaken to the cold mechanics of human nature, you can never crawl back into the comforting cocoon of your former ignorance. What replaces it is something more durable. Not innocence, but absolute clarity. Not mindless openness, but lethal discernment. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I protect my peace. Section 2. The metaphor of the blade. Imagine someone stepping out of the shadows and placing a perfectly sharpened blade directly into your palms. Initially, it feels like an extraordinary rush of power. Your perception accelerates. You spot manipulative blueprints miles before they unravel. You easily decode the hidden agendas hidden inside conversations that your old self would have accepted as completely innocent. But there is a dark law of perception that nobody warns you about. The exact same blade that shields you from external deception will cut the very hand that wields it. Total clarity demands an immense tax. The more accurately you perceive the underlying mechanics of reality, the more difficult it becomes to feel emotionally comfortable inside ordinary social environments. Machiavellian psychology proves that absolute understanding always enforces distance first. You begin to host a perpetual internal commentary running directly beneath every conversation. Someone states they are ecstatic for your recent triumph, and your internal radar immediately notes the microscopic drop in their vocal frequency. Someone tells you that you can trust them, and a calm voice inside your mind instantly replies, "Proceed with extreme tactical caution." This isn't clinical paranoia. This is elite pattern recognition, a highly sophisticated defense network constructed from the wreckage of your past experiences. But it carries an exhausting weight because you are now trapped in a state of constant translation. Machiavelli wrote extensively that appearances rule the world of human interaction. The overwhelming majority of the population are never who they claim to be on the surface. People hide parts of themselves because showing those parts previously cost them something. Vulnerability, once exploited, does not easily return to the light. But the consequence for the perceptive strategist is a creeping sense of profound isolation. You watch ordinary people connect with an effortless ease, while you carry a heavy awareness that makes casual ease nearly impossible to access. This state becomes exceptionally intense following an act of deep betrayal. Betrayal forces the human mind to launch a complete systemic audit of every single memory it possesses. Your brain retroactively sifts through years of historical data and begins reclassifying events. That specific moment that looked like pure friendship, was it real, or was it a calculated political play? Betrayal doesn't just damage your present reality, it violently alters your history. And from that historical rewrite, automated questions form. What is this person's actual transaction here? Would their behavior remain identical if my resources evaporated tomorrow? Highly perceptive strategists almost always project an aura of absolute stillness to the outside world, while navigating an incredibly turbulent sea internally. They frequently develop a sharp, dark sense of humor as a mechanism to name horrific truths without drowning in the emotional weight of them. The joke becomes light armor worn over a scarred chest. But here is the critical distinction. The exact same awareness that isolates your existence is also the only thing keeping you alive. It teaches you the art of absolute internal boundaries, not the loud boundaries that you shout, but the silent, unshakable boundaries born from a deep understanding of human limitations. It trains you to fully read an environment before investing an ounce of your energy. The ultimate hazard is never the awareness itself. The hazard emerges when the blade becomes the absolute only instrument you know how to wield. When every single human interaction is treated as a criminal investigation, you cannot live your entire existence behind protective glass. At some definitive crossroads, an individual must make a sovereign choice. Will your pain turn you into a razor-sharp strategist? Or will it simply turn you into a lonely prisoner? Will your wisdom teach you precisely when to open the gates and when to lock the fortress? Or will it collapse your entire personality into constant defensiveness? Right now, drop this affirmation in the comments. My eyes are open. Section 3. The specific species of human fear. An animal fears immediate danger. A human being fears infinite possibilities. A deer bolts the absolute second a twig snaps in the brush. Their fear is instantaneous, concrete, and highly functional. The moment the threat vacates the immediate space, the fear evaporates. But human consciousness possesses a terrifying pathology. We have the ability to suffer intensely from events that have not even occurred and may never happen in reality. We can mentally construct elaborate catastrophes, inhabit them with total emotional investment, and feel genuine physical anguish about them. Your physical body is sitting completely safe in a comfortable room, while your mind is currently living through a ruinous bankruptcy or an agonizing abandonment 3 years into the future. One delayed text message instantly translates to, they are pulling back their investment. One minor mistake at work becomes, my entire future is compromised. This is not a sign of character flaw. This is exactly what a highly complex consciousness executes once it has been subjected to deep trauma. The mind, after colliding with real pain, activates a permanent radar network scanning for future threats. It treats an anticipated emotional execution with the exact same neurological urgency that it treats an immediate physical threat. Your body responds in kind, a racing pulse, a suffocating tightness in the throat, and that deep exhaustion that comes from the relentless anticipation of disaster. Machiavelli understood that uncertainty is the single most potent lever used to manipulate human behavior. People are remarkably easy to control and break when they have no idea what the horizon holds. And uncertainty is the baseline condition of a human life. That specific quality, the deliberate choice to harbor strategic hope inside a world that gives you 1,000 logical reasons to embrace absolute cynicism, is a phenomenon that requires your deepest respect. Drop this affirmation in the comments right now. I will not fear. Section 4. The 4 blueprints of psychological survival. The human consciousness was never engineered to absorb an endless bombardment of disappointment without radically restructuring its internal terrain. The adaptations take place in the dark, gradually, one cold experience at a time. Then, reality delivers a series of brutal corrections. The entities they sacrificed their own positioning for become completely unavailable when the clouds turn black. The people they gifted their pure trust, to treat that trust as a cheap, disposable asset to be burned for a momentary advantage. After a sufficient volume of these executions, the strategist's nervous system permanently recalculates its baseline expectation of humanity. This is where strategic emotional detachment takes the field, not as coldness, but as profound fatigue, wearing the armor of absolute protection. What alters is never your capacity to feel deep emotion. The sheer volume of that intensity is the exact reason why they were forced to build the walls. What actually changes is their willingness to express it. They stop explaining their internal landscape to people who lack the sophistication to handle it. They cease performing vulnerability in social markets that treat vulnerability as currency to be stolen. Machiavelli famously noted that human loyalty typically endures only as long as the mutual benefit remains lucrative. This is a savage law of nature. But once an individual experiences it firsthand, it becomes a foundational law built directly into their strategic worldview. The strategist who once trusted by default now runs a prolonged background check before committing a single resource. And behind that measured exterior, many of them privately mourn the innocent version of themselves who didn't require an armor suit to walk down the street. That loss of easy, uncomplicated trust is a permanent cost of survival. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I face myself. The sovereign prince pain rewires human beings. Most of the time, the transformation completes itself in absolute secrecy. A minor withdrawal from a social circle, a slightly more rigid boundary established around your time. A person laughs a little less frequently, trusts with deep hesitation, and keeps specific doors inside their mind permanently locked from the inside. This is not a failure of character. This is magnificent biological and psychological adaptation. And adaptation, even when it demands an immense tax, is absolute proof that you successfully conquered the hell you walked through. Machiavelli understood that intense pressure is the ultimate validator of character, not merely the hidden character of the people surrounding you, but the actual character of your own soul under intense tactical stress. Disappointment grants you a brutal education that comfort could never provide. It teaches if this deep psychological dissection has upgraded your strategic vision today. Ensure you anchor these insights into your mind right now. Strike that like button immediately, subscribe to our channel, and join this elite circle of psychological architects. Before you leave, consider this final thought. Perhaps the heaviest tragedy of a brutal life is not the pain itself. It is the slow realization that the pain permanently executed the innocent version of the person you were originally becoming. But the sovereign entity you are constructing right now, in the aftermath of that fire, more calculated, more perceptive, more strategically deliberate, and unshakably real, that person is infinitely more qualified to rule their kingdom. Drop your final affirmation below. I will not break. Stay observant. Stay calculated. Until next time.